So, hello everyone, and welcome back to a fresh new episode of What the Field. For anyone new here, What the Field is a podcast by Crowd Farming, where we chat to experts on all of our favorite topics around regenerative agriculture, resilient supply chains, and today about fair prices and true cost accounting. So, all of these things that can kind of help us transition to a fairer and more sustainable food supply chains. And today we're joined by Pietro Galliani, who has been part of the Impact Institute and True Price for over a decade. And we're super excited actually about our conversation today because the topic of transparency, cost transparency is really interesting to us. And it's something we've been wanting to talk about for quite a while. So we're really excited to be able to do that today. And Pietro, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Nice to be here.
Great. So why don't we start from the very beginning? And Pietro, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background and kind of what led you to come into this space.
Yeah. So I come from Italy, from a rural area actually in Tuscany, and I'm now based in the Netherlands. And all along I have a background in sustainable development. So I've been learning about sustainability from all sorts of different angles, from economics, politics, sociology, technology, environmental science. And all along I felt like it's so many aspects that you have to take into account. So when I heard about True Price, the idea was that you can look at environmental cost and social cost together of a product using numbers and using money, which are very influential tools. And I always wanted to work with numbers. So there I thought, this is it. It's holistic. It's not like a tunnel vision. This is where I want to get my hands dirty. And still here.
Amazing. And so what were you doing like when you first started with True Price, or did you start with the Impact Institute or with True Price? And maybe actually whilst we're at it, you could explain the difference and how they cohabitate.
Yeah, so True Price exists since 2012 as a social enterprise and foundation with the mission to make true prices visible of all products and to have an economy which has no hidden costs. And in 2018, we launched the Impact Institute, and that is to split more the type of the work that we do is more towards creating the movement in society, in advocacy, but also with businesses that really want to bring this to reality on the shop shelves, on the price tags. From the actual work that we've been doing, a lot of work was just measuring impact, social impact, environmental impacts in supply chains. That's very related, but we kind of split. So Impact Institute works a lot with businesses and investors as well to measure and value impact. And True Price is really bringing a standard way to calculate these hidden costs and show them, and is bringing this to people and to the real day-to-day business transactions.
Hey, maybe Pietro, could you explain what people mean by true pricing when they talk about this? What should people expect when we talk about having true prices?
And hidden costs. Maybe getting the definition straight before we go deeper into the conversation.
Yeah, so every product, as you know, as you always talk about, has a long story to tell about how it's been produced. And often there is environmental aspects and social aspects, and these can be translated into actual costs that we don't pay for in our product. So from when we buy something, we see the price, but we don't know what was the climate impact, what was the water footprint, what was the land footprint of this product, what was the income of the farmers. But all these aspects can be seen as a hidden cost that someone else is paying. Like some costs are costs that we are already paying, like cost to clean water from excessive fertilizer residues or pesticide residues. Some costs are costs that our children will pay, or our grandchildren, or like climate change effects. Other costs are just the cost borne by the people working there that live below a decent standard of living, working up in the supply chains of what we buy, or living, having forced labor conditions, gender discrimination. So all these aspects can be seen as hidden costs. And since I think 10, 15 years, there is really this idea of true cost accounting, and let account for this cost the same way that we account for all the money flows in our businesses, in our economy. So the true price, the idea is that is the sum of the price that we see, the normal price, plus the hidden social cost and the hidden environmental cost.
So basically what you're doing is putting all of the challenges that we find in the supply chain, you're putting a value to them. And that sounds super complex. Can we really do this in an objective way?
It is, indeed, we put a value on it, and it has a degree of value judgment. I think it's not objective science in the way that you can measure how much something weighs or how long something is. So it's something that we have to agree together on how to do it. So we have to discuss with ourselves, what is the value of health? What is the value of nature? This super complicated topic, there is already a science behind it, with different techniques to quantify these values. And we propose a framework to do this in an open way, in a consistent way. So we draw from all these different fields to do it.
So you work with specific products or with a methodology to find out the true price or the true cost of products, and then you bring it to the market, or what's the next step to actually get people to pay a true price?
Our vision, first of all, is not that we show this cost and that's what we should pay, but we want to show this cost so that we can bring them down. Is what we call the true price gap, is the gap between the current price and the true price, and we want to close this gap. So our vision is to work in 3 steps. First of all, making it visible so that we can start to think about it, take different decisions when we buy something, but also, when we choose what to buy, and in business, when you talk to your suppliers. And then the next step is voluntary initiatives, where maybe temporarily, or you can pay the true price, or maybe you can just create collaboration to reduce the true price gap, to make your product more sustainable. And then the third steps is what we actually need is a system change, so that the rules of the game change for everyone. It's not a voluntary anymore, but it becomes cheaper to be more sustainable. So you should actually pay these social and environmental costs if you don't close the gap.
Okay, so it's kind of 3 ways, right? So you have it with the companies. So the true cost of this banana is this much because you're doing things this way. If you change it the way you're doing it, the cost would be reduced. So that's on the supply chain side, right? On the companies, maybe on the producers. Then you have the consumer. Maybe there's actions on voluntarily. You can buy this product, but if you want to pay for the true cost of it, this is how much it is. And then kind of setting standards for industries on what the true pricing should be, or things that need to change to ensure kind of minimum sustainability or fairness of the supply chain, right?
Yeah.
Correct. Super interesting.
And how it works in the Netherlands, there's been quite a lot of experimenting with this. There's also been experiments outside of the Netherlands. Like there was a famous experiment in Germany with a big chain of supermarkets, Penny, who put these hidden costs on the price tag for a number of food products for a month, I think. But there's really still a lot of different experiments. Like some places, they would ask you, do you want to pay the true price? In other places, they actually charge it standard. But also in some places, they just charge a part of it. And part of it, the company maybe absorbs.
Yes, and that would be kind of my question with this true price accounting. Like, have you thought on how is this extra price that you maybe put on the tag how do you ensure this will actually go to where it needs to go? Because normally what we see with these types of strategies is that it is sometimes absorbed by the people who put the price, that normally it's supermarkets. So how do we ensure that this kind of doesn't stay in a marketing campaign of true cost accounting, and it really trickles down to who need to be paid for this, or what initiatives need to be paid to solve the challenges that the supply chain is creating?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, you know that there are companies, there are value chains where already everyone is working to reduce these hidden costs. And sometimes these products with the current market, they'll be more expensive. So this is already doing the work of internalizing the external cost, you would call it. How our project works is, first of all, just to create awareness, really, to make people think in this way, because people care about sustainability. We as consumer, we care a lot, if you ask, but we don't really make necessarily the bridge to prices. When we are shopping, we just think lowest the price, the better. So it's just to trigger the thinking. And when you actually make initiatives that collect funds, depending on how big or how small they are, we in the end use the same tools the other initiatives use. Like, you first of all, you need a bit of commitment, so you cannot do one product at a time. You need a certain volume, a certain amount of time. You need a commitment from the suppliers. You need to collect data on how is external cost being reduced, how is the money being used. So it's the normal ways that you finance these initiatives, but then it adds an extra source of financing, because you actually allows to tell the consumer, look, we're doing this. Do you want to pitch in a way? So, and it can, this is the right way to do it.
And maybe to get some perspective on what this looks like more specifically, are there examples of like where this has been applied? How much is the difference usually between the true price and the actual price tag? Is it a really big difference usually? And maybe just if you have any more like tangible examples, so that people maybe who are less familiar with the concepts, who haven't been involved in these kind of campaigns, can get an understanding of what that may look like.
Yeah, right. So how big is this, or what are we talking about? When it comes to food, like fruits, vegetables, it would be often around 10-20 cents more per kilo.
Okay.
I mean, milk, it would be like 80 cents per liter, so it'd be higher. Animal product, it got much higher. Like meat would be 3, 4, 5 euros extra per kilo. Beef is really a lot bigger, like 40 or more, 50, 60. Like coffee cups, we work a lot in coffee corners. It would be like 5, 10, 20 cents per liter, or 40 if you have a lot of milk in it. This kind of figure. So sometimes it's so small that you don't even think about it. Sometimes it starts to be a little bit thinking like, this can change the behavior. And sometimes it's so big that the shop would say, I cannot charge this. I can never put this on the price tag.
Mm-hmm. And so, sorry, go ahead.
No, and then how does it work in practice? I can make some examples. In this German supermarket experiment, they put this premium, let's say, on some dairy products, meat products, and meat substitutes. And then you saw a little shift in consumption, that people bought less of the animal-based products because the price was higher. And then they collected funds that then got invested in some sustainable farming projects, dairy farming, sustainable farming projects. We were not involved in this project, but it was really the biggest. In Amsterdam, there is a supermarket, an organic supermarket that has this on fruits and vegetables for everyone for 5 years now, almost. And they have every time someone buys some, and also on bread and some other products, Every time you buy something, you can see actually behind the cash register, there is a screen that shows how much money has been collected, and everybody contributes 10 cents, 50 cents, €1. And it becomes a sort of a small impact investment fund that then it's used to support farmers to make extra investments. And one of the projects that came out of this is in the banana value chain. So this is one single store, but they involve the two big supermarket chains of just purely organic supermarket in the Netherlands, who then involved their suppliers, who then involved the cooperatives in two countries, Dominican Republic and Peru. And together they collected the data to really look at the external costs of their actual farmers and producers. And then they made together an agenda of, okay, what should we invest in? What can we do? They decided we want to renovate the plantations. There was differences in the two countries, but change the irrigation system, for example, and measures to improve the soil. And then they make a multi-year program out of this. And actually, when it goes back to the shop, these supermarkets, they are doing this week, actually, just a 1 week action, a special offer where bananas are more expensive than normal, 50 cents more, which is less than the external cost that we calculated, but it's just they felt like this is what we can pay. And they are also, and next to this, so these are extra clear payment from the consumer. Next to this, the companies are also all pitching in, and Dutch government is also supporting it. Plus, in a way, a big impact of this project is that, so normally the farmer and the supermarkets, they never sit around the table. There is steps in between together. Through this project, because they were all sitting around the table together, the farmer said, look, we want to invest in these things anyway, but we cannot get a loan because our contracts are always 3 months, 4 months, 2 months, 6 months. And then the supermarkets and the mill and the trader, they said, let's make a 5-year contract. And that was a huge thing because then they could just go to the bank. So the farmer themselves are also investing themselves additionally. And so this is how, in practice, you enter in this value chain transformation dynamics. It can be different in every value chain.
And from your experience, Pietro, I think the ultimate question many times is we are consumers who, and I include ourselves, like who say that we care about sustainability and fairness, but sometimes when it comes to paying for it, we actually take a step back sometimes. What's your experience with this? Are consumers really willing to pay more to support a fair and sustainable food supply chain? Or they're, in theory, willing to, but then when it touches their wallets, they're not so much?
Yeah, well, first of all, the consumer research that we've seen and that we've done, it shows that there is a very big intention to pay. Like there was a survey in the Netherlands. They asked really the average consumer, they asked more than 2,000 people. They explained the concept. And then 59% said they would be ready to pay the true price. It's really huge. It's 60%. It's more than half. Then when we do in practice, we actually ask them at the cash register. It's a very diverse set of reactions. It depends on who is asking. Is it a big brand or is it a small, trustworthy, or a brand that people trust? Is it what kind of information they get on how the money is spent? Is it default yes or is it default no? I mean, like, do they ask you, do you want to pay the true price extra, or do you say this is the true price, or do you maybe want to pay the market price? It depends where you are, what kind of urban, rural, which kind of part of the world you are, which kind of target group of people, let's say. So it varies a lot. There is, I think, overall a big intention to pay more, but of course it should remain affordable. But I would say awareness goes in steps. First of all, people are, first level is you're not even aware that something's wrong with the food system, right? Then you become aware, then you make the connection to your own consumer behavior and you think, oh, maybe I need to change. And then the next steps is how much are you willing to change, and how much are you willing, in a way, also to spend more. And the way we decide whether you want to pay a price or not is also based on anchoring this idea that, when sometimes in a menu there is a very expensive dish, and they say just there from a marketing perspective to make the other dishes look cheaper. And this is just the way we work. We're trying to figure out, is this a fair price or not? And without even thinking consciously about it, we compare to the information that we have. So the true price also makes you think in this way. It starts to think, well, if you really want to be fair, this is what it would cost like. So you have a bit more space to think about, okay, how much do I want to pay? But overall, changing our own behaviors, changing our own thinking around this, and how we see our role in the big challenges of the world is not something that you can just do with a simple switch. It just takes time. It's a long process of evolution. As a society, I would say, we are all part of it as individuals, but it's a societal evolution.
Yeah. And this maybe is a bit of a stupid question, but does the true price always have to be more than the price tag? Are there any examples where the true cost of a product is actually lower than the price tag?
In our framework, it cannot be, so we take the market price for granted.
Okay.
And then we look at what's going wrong in the value chain.
So there's no
But
calculation based on
other ways.
Yeah, sorry, the profits that they choose, the profits that the brands are choosing to add on, right, to for their margins, that's never, or that's not taken into account when you're calculating the true cost, or do you? Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure if that's clear.
We're not taking that into account. There are, of course, studies. They also look at how the price that we pay, who is getting how much.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And that's a different study. Yeah.
Yeah.
About value distribution.
Okay, because your methodology is based on this is the market price, and on top of that, what's going wrong, what should be paid extra that this supply chain is actually not addressing, right? Okay. Yeah. Because I was going to ask, and then maybe this question is not super relevant, but what are people, and I mean by this either the supply chain or the consumers or even yourselves, more surprised of when they see the true cost accounting? Because in our case, many times people are surprised at the percentage the farmer gets, because normally we don't take into account, for example, the logistics, how expensive it is to get a produce from the farm to the consumer who can be very far away, or the packaging, or the customer service we have here at crowd farming, things like that. So what does normally surprise people of your true cost balance? Yeah.
Well, the true price calculation has so many layers and so many stories to tell. Some surprising things are how small it is sometimes. You say, oh, it's actually so small, why we don't just pay it? But yeah, sometimes you get surprised about how big it is. Like for beef, for example, it's really big. And then you think, oh my God.
And why is that?
Sometimes you're, yeah.
Why is that, beef. Pietro? Yeah.
The land use and the climate impact of beef is just really high because of the amount of agriculture produce that you need to make to produce, to make the cows grow. Plus all the, enteric fermentation, which is a scientific name for burps and farts. They have methane, and there's a strong climate effect. So it's actually, in the food system is the sector that has the biggest impact.
And so in this percentage, so like 10% for fruit and veg, or this higher percentage for beef, what is, I think we spoke about it a little bit in the beginning, but what exactly is included in the percentage? So there's the environmental factor, which is what we're talking about now, like land use and all of that. And then do you take into account like healthcare costs, or how much a consumer or how much citizens have to pay in taxes for healthcare and then the impact of diet in healthcare?
What we take into account is a list of 10 social and 10 environmental topics.
Okay.
So there's indeed climate, water, land, soil, water pollution, air pollution, and depletion of fossil fuels and other materials. And there is social aspects. There's a lot of child labor, forced labor, living wages.
Mm-hmm.
So do people earn below a living wage? Do farmers earn below a living income? Other labor-related aspects. We don't take into account health of the consumer as a standard because it's a bit tricky. We want something that people can imagine paying, and it's a bit confusing to ask people to pay even extra for unhealthy products. Then who do you give the money to? You should compensate that person themselves. But and it depends. One product. If I eat one, it can be fine. If I eat 100 in a year, it can be really unhealthy. It really depends on the diet. So we want to bring it down to a product, and health is a diet thing. But we have done studies about health of consumers or health of people eating, and it's staggering how big these costs are, either healthcare costs or the value of health loss. So, the value of health loss, just suffering, basically. It's staggering. It's bigger than environmental costs. The FAO, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, has made these studies, and it's really, huge. We also did some studies bigger than the value of food itself.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask, Pietro, how do organic or regenerative produce score versus conventional products?
Yeah, this is a very good question. Because when we look at the impacts at the product level, so a single product, what's the impact of this single product? You lose a bit out of sight how the farm looks. Because you can have a product with a very low impact, but if your farm produces 10 billions of these products, you go to the farm and the farm still has a very big impact. So it's a trade-off between efficiency and sustainability. So it depends. I think so there is a lot of research also just on the CO2 footprint of organic or the land footprint of organic, and these aspects depends. It's not clear cut which one is better, but of course all the indicators that you look at farm level, you can see that an organic farm is performs better for the environment, for the surrounding water, air quality, and biodiversity is definitely better. So yeah, we are actually working to go beyond this limit, because this is really a limit of looking at the impacts of products. Basically assumes that we need all the products, let's make them as little impact as possible. But this kind of thinking doesn't solve the actual problems. In a place there is a problem, and actually back to the banana cooperatives, someone told us, okay, I understand if our productivity increases, the water footprint of 1 kilo of banana goes down if we use the same amount of water. And that's really nice for the consumer, it feels better. But for us, we use the same water. So for the surrounding towns, it doesn't matter. But we're really trying to see how can we bring this thinking in the true price calculation. It's something I'm really excited about, that we're doing now this work, and we hope to make a proposal of a new way to look at it, because it's really important. Because it's going away from thinking a farm is a single function, just food. Thinking more about a farm is also managing natural capital, it's steward of the land. So how do we take this into account? We shouldn't just look at products.
So if I understand correctly, the issue is if a farm that is in conventional, in the short term at least, has higher productivity, this means that, for example, when you score in land use, right, the conventional one is going to score higher because they can use, for example, a lot of fertilizer and produce a lot in a smaller space. and that is good scoring for land use, I guess. So the space that is being used to growing bananas is not used for having a forest, for example, and that means that it scores well, but it's not taking into account the huge amounts of fertilizers that it might be using, right? Is this it?
Yeah.
Or the future impact of those synthetic chemicals on the land, on the degradation of the soil, etc.
Well, yeah, we do take into account, but then it's not never clear cut. It really depends on which product you're looking at and where. In some cases, it's clear the organic is better. In some cases, it's kind of the same. In some cases, it's more efficient. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, we have this problem in general with CO, with carbon accounting, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But there is also, first thing to do is really try to bring biodiversity in the equation and not only carbon. Because, we actually published recently a paper about why are the benefits of organic agriculture not coming out in all the impact performances. And they see that there is a huge focus on square meters and kilos of CO2 per kilo of product. And these are the only two indicators of the whole palette that you could take that kind of are biased towards intensive agriculture.
Yeah, I guess it's how the system is based, right? We have a lot of focus on hectares and kilograms per hectare, and that it's kind of it. It's how the CAP is oriented, right? So it's the origin of a lot of the challenges that we have nowadays.
I mean, efficiency is good, but we have to step.
At what cost?
This thinking of low cost, high intensity, it came from when Europe was not food secure. After the World War, we needed to produce more, and we reached the goal, and we overreached. So we produce and we export a lot, and now we have new challenges. So we are in the way when these two ways of thinking change. Like, okay, efficiency, yes, but it's not everything. We also have to look at what's left behind.
And I see your point, and let's not demonize that type of agriculture that was very useful for a stage in which Europe needed it. But as you say, we have new challenges, and now we have to readapt and recalibrate how we practice agriculture.
Yeah. And so you mentioned that you're working on this project now of like integrating these new elements into the way that you approach your cost accounting. What changes have you seen? Because obviously, like, you've been in this space for like over a decade. How has it evolved over all of this time? And like, what are you kind of seeing for the future, or like, what is the next step going to be as well for cost accounting?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, we were getting kind of feedback more when we were talking about our work, more like, are you crazy? Is this possible even? And then at some point we got a change. We also saw it very well when we go to talk in universities, what we get from the students. At some point it switched and everybody thought, okay, of course we need it. And of course it's possible. So let's talk about what we're going to do with it. How do you use it? What does it mean to pay this into the shop? And why do you take this into account or not? So it's really acceptance grew a lot. In society we see it, and in business as well. But also internationally, I think from policy level, there's been after the United Nations Food System Summit in 2021, and then 2023, 2024, the FAO, as I said before, published these two really landmark studies. They basically have every year a report called The State of Food and Agriculture, where they pick a theme and they make a global analysis for policymakers. And all the Ministry of Agricultures in the world, they are in relation with the FAO, so it's really influential agency. And they, for 2 years in a row, for the first time, they treated the same topic, and this topic was true cost accounting. So we see really, really changing. Like, people are more starting to think now, okay, how do we implement it, rather than do we want it or not, and is it possible? Yeah.
So the next stage is in like, now that awareness and acceptance has already happened, it's in the implementation and the scaling of the usage.
Yeah, exactly. So how we think of accounting, financial accounting, we kind of take it for granted, our generation, but it hasn't always existed. 100 years ago, basically everybody would do their accounting the way they wanted, and there was no one way to do it. And some people did not do it. A lot of people did not do it. And now it's mandatory for all companies, and there's a standard that even globally is the same. So in the longer perspective, these things change, so we have to think, and the EU has been trying to introduce rules, has been introducing rules of reporting on what you report on, and it's really, it's a learning process. How do we do this? How do we report? What do we report, in which order? Where do we start from? How do we build it up? And but I think we are now in this transition.
And Pietro, do you see great differences in the? We've talked about products and product categories and the difference we see amongst them, but do you see differences in regions? Like, is it different to source a product from Europe than from other regions in the world? And does the accounting change?
Absolutely, yes, very much. Some products come from areas where there's a tropical rainforest, which is really valuable, and you would see it in the results. Some products come when there is from countries where there is no minimum wage. Like there you all see that in the results, that then the income of people is a lot lower. Also, irrigation can be very different from one country to the other for the same product. It's really, you definitely, the more we look into the data, the more we discover these differences.
And do you see surprises sometimes? Because sometimes it happens to us. We get into the depth of the research, and suddenly you've made assumptions on how, for example, the emissions of a product that comes from really far away from or from the other side of the ocean, from the emissions that come from Europe, and you have surprises, because then you see, as you said, if we look at per kilogram of product, maybe the difference is not so huge because it's coming in huge volumes, and the emissions and by boat, so the emissions are not so different. So do you have surprises such as this one?
Yeah, definitely. The idea that transport food miles are a very small part of the impact is something that is new, and is now more and more people are realizing it. But it's something that indeed that's what numbers show. And so that also makes you think, does it make sense to import or not? But then, of course, you shouldn't all stare blindly at the results of one single product. If you look at social impacts, it's very clear that we look at the living wage gap. That's the gap between what people earn and what's a decent standard of living in that place. And then you look at it per product, and it's tiny. It's really like a couple of cents most of the time. And then you tend to say, this is not the most important impact. Let's look at the most important impact is maybe climate or something else. But for these people, it's a huge impact, right? So if you look at just a 1 cup of coffee and you pay 1 cent extra to a farmer, it doesn't make any difference. It's small for 1 cup of coffee, but it's a huge topic when you look at the life of a person. So you should not only look at metrics per product. Definitely, you should always contextualize it. The reason why we say let's look at it per product is because it really makes us, as people buying things or as companies buying things, think the moment that we buy something and we look at the price, make the link with the sustainability values.
Yes, it's a balance between going very deep in the numbers and using common sense, right? And reading what the numbers said, but then be able to gain perspective and look at the whole picture. And I think my last question would be, how do you see in this initial stage that you were talking about awareness and about actually not kind of collecting the funds, but actually raising awareness? What are kind of the behavior change or the nudging that you're seeing in people? Like how is realizing all of these things behind what you're paying for, actually changing people's behaviors?
We see definitely the most clear insight that people get and they adapt to is the difference between plant-based and animal-based products. So we see a lot in the coffee bars. There is a rise on plant-based milk when this data is shown. But also, it's some, for example, some catering companies that we work with, they started to offer a vegan version of a snack instead of a vegetarian one, because the vegetarian one had a lot of dairy and egg products that still made the footprint quite high, for example. They changed some recipes to reduce the footprint. I think this is more from a company side. So the companies also reflect on these things and give more space to plant-based products or plant-based ingredients in a product. So reducing also the quantity of an ingredient in a recipe, animal-based, to reduce the impact.
And why would anyone, what's the drive behind doing this? Because when a supplier actually does that, it's like showing all of the shames of the supply chain, right? Like, we are not doing all of this good, so this is why you have to pay more. It's difficult to understand for the consumer, right?
So it is for company. What's in it is to show transparency and honesty, show that you are aware of the problems and you are doing what you can towards it. But it is a negative story, so it should always be linked to actually the acceptance of people is much higher if you also show what's positive about it, like executive action. That really makes a big difference to the acceptance.
Super interesting. I think it's something that we definitely need to be thinking about and talking about more around us. And we usually like to finish off this podcast with 2 questions that are slightly more fun or slightly more lighthearted after talking about quite heavy topics. So since you've been working in this space and you've seen so many things over the past few years, what would you say is something that has really made you think, oh my gosh, what the field, like what is going on? Like the most surprising or unexpected thing that you've seen whilst working with True Price?
Well, I have to think about something that happened last week that was really, for me, very striking, although it didn't make any headline, but it was about the US administration with President Trump in a UN assembly. They not only rejected the Sustainable Development Goals, denounced the Sustainable Development Goals as a really bad thing. And the Sustainable Development Goals, for everyone, I think, in business and policy, it's clear that it's kind of the global agreement to let's try to improve poverty, improve malnutrition, and female education, and water quality, and all these topics. And thinking that one of the superpowers, and everybody kind of agreed, is denouncing them and pulling back, is really like, what the F? It's really not. The world is changing right now. And I think in Europe, we really have to show that there is an alternative. And that's what's next for us, is to show that we still believe that you can we already have a system, political economic system, which has some higher degree of guarantees for basic rights, for the environment. And it, of course, is far from perfect, but it's still openly saying we care about these things. So I think, that really shows us that we have to step up and being more vocal in Europe. It also brings Europe together, I think, in this way.
Yeah, feeling the responsibility of the counterbalance, right? Like trying to balance out the weight a little bit.
Yeah, responsibility in the positive side, like responsibility, like
the ability to respond,
to step up, I would say.
Yeah, that's cool. I never thought of responsibility as in that meaning, but it's the ability to respond, of course. Yeah, sounds a lot better. Cool. And so as a last question to close off this great episode, is there like a book or a film or a song or a podcast or something that you've heard or read recently that you would recommend to our listeners?
Yes. I would go for a book that is called The Green History of the World. And, when we study history, we learn a lot in school about kings and kingdoms and battles and wars. And we get this idea that history is a sort of, a novel based on what people want. And The Green History of the World is one of those books that looks at history from perspective of natural resources. What happens when a civilization has a lot of natural resources? What happens when it runs out? How do you deal with it? Why do certain civilizations thrive for 1,000 years, 2,000 years, and then later not anymore? Is it really because of a battle at a king, or is it because something happened to the water supply, or to the soil erosion, or to forests? It was really eye-opening for me, and I think, it makes you, it really puts things into a new perspective, which I think is much more useful than the history written by the winners that we normally study of what the kings did and why they think they did it.
That sounds so interesting, and it goes back to the contextualization, right? What is happening in the environment at the same time that these historical moments take place?
I have to ask you one last question on top of this. That it's you're a crowd farming consumer, and you're an expert on true cost accounting. What would be a recommendation that you would give crowd farming on how we can take a step forward in this path?
Oh, it's very difficult. Yeah, so I love the oranges from crowd farming. I'm sad because now we're talking in March and the season is ending. I'm really happy. I don't know. I don't know. I have to think about that. I recommend it.
Get back to us with this one. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe even more.
Maybe you should show more, collect more data about your environmental and social achievements, I would say.
Okay. We'll look into that. We'll look into much deeper into your reports and see what we can do to take a step forward and see what others are doing, and try to become closer to the way it should be, right? And the way you're recommending it to be.
There's a lot to be done, but we're planting the seeds for a better future and need to take care of them.
Absolutely. Amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. It's been such a great conversation.
Thank you. It's been really nice.
Thank you, Pietro.
Okay. Thanks everyone for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye.